No, not again.
It's no surprise I'm not a fan of most horror games coming out these days.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Not to say there aren't great ones, but for every amazing game like Signalis, the genre punishes us with something like Agony or even worse, Hello Neighbor.
What the hell?
Thankfully, there's a horror series that I do like, and that's the Silent Hill trilogy. Out of these beloved games, Silent Hill 3 is regarded as the most terrifying. And to some fans, it's considered the best Silent Hill. So, just like my recent video on Silent Hill 1, I'll be stepping into the shoes of Heather Mason, discovering all the little details and design choices that's made Silent Hill 3 the blood-curdling experience fans have come to love for over 20 years now. There's something you should know before watching this video. I use a Steam Deck to emulate and record most of the games on this channel. 90% of the time, it works flawless. A Silent Hill 3, however, has been that 10% that doesn't. What you're seeing right now is raw gameplay from my very first run, and I couldn't see 2 feet in front of me without a flashlight. This was my first time experiencing the game, so I genuinely thought this was normal. Bruh, I went through the entire game like this, even areas that gave me a borderline migraine. I know this area is supposed to be trippy, but this was painful. Even turning up the brightness slider in-game to max didn't do much of anything. So I hit up fellow YouTuber Purple Doe, since she was the only person I knew that had a physical copy of Silent Hill 3 on original hardware. If it wasn't for her just cooking my ass in the DMs,
yeah, dummy, learn how to work a brightness slider. What the fuck is this?
I would have blamed the game thinking it was just a dark and buggy mess, but that's not true. Silent Hill 3 can just be very finicky to emulate. Now, here's the part where I wish I could say, ooh, everything's perfect even after tweaking the emulator, but that's just not the case. So, if you see anything that's kinda weird, or cutscenes that are too dark or too bright, you can thank my awful emulation skills for that one. This time around, we're taking the role of Heather Mason, the daughter of Harry Mason, the first game's protagonist. Now, this is gonna sound a little weird, but Silent Hill 3 is a direct continuation of Silent Hill 1. Yeah, the second game, that shit has nothing to do with 1 or 3.
My name's James. It's hot as hell in here.
James Sunderland was caught shaking that shit in broad daylight.
Now, this is important because at the end of Silent Hill 1, if you did the good ending, Harry receives a newborn daughter. And that daughter? Yeah, this is her 17 years later.
Where am I?
I guess you could say like father, like daughter, because Silent Hill 3 opens just like Silent Hill 1. We're in a nightmare. Taking a look at our surroundings, we can see the iconic rustic architecture Silent Hill 1 made famous. If we're to follow the logic set in the first game, I have no doubts in my mind this is the Otherworld. More specifically, the Lakeside Amusement Park, which is a location we went to in the first game. It's where the civil boss fight took place, but why the hell are we here? Why can't we leave? And damn, these rabbits are kinda creepy. Opening our inventory, I had to do a double take. The opening cutscene implies that we only have a knife, but Heather's also equipped with a steel pipe, pistol, and a fully functioning Uzi. All I could ask myself is, where the hell did she find this? Though the answer to that question will have to wait. Entering the only door we can, we're instantly ambushed by what appears to be a split-headed dog covered in bandages. This is the Doublehead, quite a fitting name given that its defining feature is 2 dog heads split vertically. Imagine you took the Groaners plus the split head boss from Silent Hill 1 and crossbreeded them. Yeah, you would get this ugly ass abomination. Honestly, SH3 might hold the title for the fastest time to fight an enemy. We watched one cutscene, went through one door, and we're already throwing hands. To make things worse, the radio is still going off, and I can faintly hear the sounds of something big and oddly squishy. Rounding the corner, we're met with a grotesque creature with a towering figure. It appears feminine, but oddly masculine. Regardless, it's completely rancid with giant fleshy punching bags for hands. I don't know if I'm brave or just stupid, because I tried to light this creature up without even reloading my gun. Thankfully, Heather was able to get up off the ground roughly 2 business days later and finally put it down. So this enemy is called the Closer, and fighting it felt like deja vu, and that's because its model is almost identical to a creature found in Silent Hill 2. Yeah, remember these big fleshy guys? Well, maybe not, because they only showed up in 3 areas of the game, but this is the Mandarin. Looking at the two side by side here, you can see that they're almost identical, even down to the elephant-sized lips protruding from the arms and face. With the Closer having such a high health pool, it's best to just avoid them like most enemies in Silent Hill. From here, there's a candy shop called the Sweet Factory Store with 2 doors that lead absolutely nowhere. Unless you just love looking at fictional merchandise all day, this is not where we're supposed to be. Heading north through a wooden door, we're instantly ganked by Lord knows how many meat munchers. And past those guys, it doesn't get any better. With more double HUDs and a new annoying ass enemy called the Pendulum, this is an absolute shit show. One that reaches its smelly climax at the top of a roller coaster ride. Presented with a locked door and a small army of enemies trying to rip us apart, the only way to go is on the tracks themselves. Now, it doesn't take a PhD to realize this is not a good situation. You hear that little noise? Yeah, that means the ride is still active, but regardless, Heather proceeds, and in a not so shocking turn of events, this happens. But just like Silent Hill 1, that was just a nightmare. There's no amusement park. Well, at least not yet. Now, this scene is just downright gorgeous for an opening. You can just tell the developers were really starting to hone their craft when working with PS2 hardware. If someone had shown me this without telling me it was a PS2 game, I would have guessed this was from a 7th generation console. But no, they achieved this level of fidelity all the way back in 2003. It's extremely impressive and holds up quite well. After fighting sleep demons inside the local Happy Burger, we find ourselves in a uniquely ordinary place for a Silent Hill game. This is the Central Square Shopping Center, and where our journey truly begins.
Dad, it's me. Yeah. Sorry I didn't call sooner.
After talking on the phone with her dad, Harry Mason, we now know that Heather was running errands for him. Well, before we fell asleep back at the Happy Burger. Our objective now is pretty simple. Let's get back home. But things take a creepy turn when an older man is caught stalking us, and even worse, he happens to know our name.
Heather, I need to speak with you. My name is Douglas Cartland. I'm a detective.
Douglas is one persistent bastard. Despite Heather's repeated attempts to disengage, he continues to follow her, insisting that someone wants to meet Heather.
Hold on. There's someone that wants to meet you.
My daddy always told me not to talk to strangers.
This is very important. It's about your birth.
If you beat an SH1, that statement should be an immediate red flag, since Heather's birth is directly correlated with the cult known as the Order. Again, Heather attempts to distance herself, but Douglas continues to follow her, all the way to the women's restroom.
Are you still following me? Do I have to scream?
Sorry. I'll wait here.
Thanks to Heather's quick thinking and a low-key terrifying situation, we find ourselves in the women's restroom, where the game can truly begin. I love the melancholy rock song that's been playing ever since we left the Happy Burger. Again, this is yet another, dare I say, timeless masterpiece from Akira Yamaoka. This man is a certified musical genius. I didn't grow up playing Silent Hill 3, but goddamn does this track make me feel nostalgic for it. And above all, this song can really be viewed as the calm before the storm, as from this point forward, things are only going to get worse. Inside the bathroom, we should probably talk about this big ass seal stuck on the mirror. This is the Halo of the Sun, which is the proper name for the iconic symbol associated with the cult called the Order. Now, for gameplay reasons, this serves as a save point, and this is the only way you can save throughout your Silent Hill 3 journey, so they are very valuable. After using the save point, you'll realize that the bathroom is quite tiny with only 3 things we can interact with. The first being the door we entered. Trying to backtrack where we came from, Heather will refuse as she doesn't want to encounter Douglas again.
Sorry. I'll wait here.
Stop it. Get some help.
The second is this bathroom stall, which knocking on it reveals there's another girlie just trying to take a shit. If you're a sick bastard, you can attempt to knock again, but the game's gonna call you out for it because bro, that's just fucking weird. And finally, this conveniently placed window that is wide open. From here, we can slip out the bathroom into a nearby alleyway. And damn, is this a sight to see. The sunset perfectly captures this feeling of walking home from class on a late evening. But remember, this is a Silent Hill game. Trying to leave through either ends of the alley results in something blocking your way. From a pile of crates to some dickhead that backed their van into this narrow ass alley. Like, bro, you can't even open your doors. What are you doing? So the only way to go is back through a mall maintenance wing, and this shit is a instant mood killer. Silent Hill 3 is the type of game where 1 minute you're vibing in the bathroom and the next your butt cheeks are hot, puckered, and moist because Lord knows what's lurking around the corner. Without a proper map of the area, we're gonna have to explore the back rooms to find a way to escape. Most, if not all, the doors in this area are locked, besides one set of double doors at the very end of the hallway. From here we find ourselves in a mall foyer, but you can tell that something's off. There's a lot of gunk on the floor that looks like a mix of dried up blood and fecal matter. This disgusting trail of fluids leads us to the only shop with visible light, and like a moth to the flame, I had to figure out what was inside. Entering the dimly lit store, we find our very first firearm, a Beretta 9mm handgun, but that's not the only thing waiting for us. In the corner is a closer who is giving mad sloppy toppy to a corpse. But the nightmare has prepared us well, so we empty our mag into the closer, taking it down fairly easy.
Get the hell away from me!
Now, I do have a small bone to pick with this cutscene because it is straight up gaslighting the player. Closers do not die that easy. So, just like I said in the nightmare, we are going to avoid these guys as best as we can. I would say this is a pretty pivotal event in the story that starts to warp Heather's innocence, which will be an ongoing theme for this entry. This is supported by a small detail found in the inventory system. Since the beginning of the game, Heather's been equipped with a knife. Examining it reveals that she's always carried it for self-defense, but she's never had to use it. But after brain blasting that closer, it's changed now. Examining the knife after this point, it says,
I know it's terrible, but I just love walking around with this. Of course, this is the first time I've used it against anything living.
I know it's a minute detail, but what makes Silent Hill 3 stand out is all the little bits of characterization subtly sprinkled in as you play. Heather will rarely say out loud how she's feeling, but reading her inner monologue as you interact with the world reveals a lot. A good example of this is how back in the mall bathroom, interacting with the mirror makes her express how much she hates them. Which tells me this is a teenager that is struggling with her body image. She isn't a damsel in distress or an elite super soldier, she's just a normal girl trying to survive in an extraordinary circumstance. That might not seem noteworthy to say, but you have to remember this was released in 2003. Back then, finding a female protagonist that was genuinely relatable was hard to come by. But I'll tell you what's not hard to find, handgun ammo, as there's an entire stash in this room with the dead closer. We can also get a closer look at the victim in the corner, which reveals it's actually a reskin model of Angela from Silent Hill 2. Heading out the back door, we find ourselves in another maintenance hallway where we can finally secure a map of the Central Square shopping center. Taking a look at it shows that we should probably head up to the second floor, but it's here where we discover something unnerving. This little cum goblin is known as the Numb Body. It's not really that imposing or scary, but the musical score here really makes you feel like you're going to encounter something far more dangerous. Not to say these guys can't kill you, but they are slow and you can easily outmaneuver them. We'll need to dodge this seaman soldier before we can enter the second floor lobby. This room is not where you want to be idle, as there's two closers ready to batter your face in. But we need to make our way to a quaint little shop called Helen's Bakery. It's here we can experience the most deeply profound inner monologue from Heather.
It's bread.
But in all seriousness, we're here for a pair of metal tongs, which sounds odd, but trust me, it'll make sense in like 2 seconds. Back in the hallway with the sperm demon, we can hook a hard left to find a storeroom containing ammo, medical supplies, and the coveted save point we know and love. But that's not why we're here. The back of this room contains a pallet with a shiny object visible from the slits. This is a key, but our meaty little hands can't squeeze through the gap. But I'll tell you what can, those metal tongs we just got. With the keys in hand, taking a closer look shows that they belong to a place called My Bestsellers, which we can infer is a bookstore somewhere on the second floor lobby. But before heading that way, we should save our game, and as I was doing so, I noticed a subtle but reoccurring detail. Every time Heather interacts with a new save point, it seems as though a new memory comes to mind. For this one, she talks about remembering the save point symbol from a book about black magic, but then mentions an altar of sorts, before flat out rejecting that thought. To me, that sounds like she's getting memories from another person. I've played Silent Hill 1, so I have a good idea who it might be, but it's too early to tell. So we'll keep that in the back of our mind going forward. Backtracking where we came from, those goofy ass cum goblins have multiplied in numbers. Again, we'll just outmaneuver them the best we can. Using the key we just found, we can gain access to the bookstore. Inside, my first thought was, this is a lot of visual detail for a room that players probably won't spend more than 10 minutes in. Well, unless you're playing on hard riddle difficulty, then you probably know this room too damn well. The puzzle of this room is to sort a set of Shakespeare books to get a 4-digit code to access the back rooms. On normal difficulty, this is pretty easy. Just mix and match the books until you can make out the code. Now, hard mode, that shit is up there with the damn piano puzzle from Silent Hill 1.
Boof, I have never seen a piano, let alone touched one. And you expect me to solve this? I'm out.
If you don't have any working knowledge of Shakespeare, good luck, buddy. There's no way you're solving this puzzle without help. And even if you do, you still have to do some mental math afterwards to get the final code. And that right there was the nail in the coffin for me. I'm all for a challenge, but the developers were smoking white Claudia here. Silent Hill 3's puzzles are extremely easy, or they will make you want to do the in water ending. There's no in between. Opting for normal difficulty, the door code ended up being 2856. Punching that in gives us a little more than we expected.
Hey, wait, what's going on? Where is everybody? Those weird monsters?
They have come to witness the beginning.
What are you talking about?
Don't you know? Your power is needed.
How should I know?
I am Claudia.
So what?
It's rare that a Silent Hill game makes me laugh, but I won't lie, I would have said the same shit in this situation. Heather doesn't care who Claudia is, she just wants to know what the hell is going on.
Claudia, right? Did you do all this?
It was the hand of God.
I don't get it. What does she want me to remember?
There's quite a bit to unpack here. We now know there's a lady named Claudia that is behind the monsters inside the mall. It's no coincidence that shortly before we meet her, the area is infested with closers and numb bodies. How she's doing that or enabling it has yet to be seen, but we know she has some level of influence on them.
They have come to witness the beginning.
She also apparently has the power to mentally or physically invade Heather's body using only her gaze, which is not only disturbing, but violating. On top of that, we're given a vague motive as to what Claudia wants. If her words are to be believed, she desires Heather to remember her true self and use Heather's supposed powers to usher in the rebirth of paradise. Now, if you've seen my Silent Hill 1 video, that should sound very familiar, because it's identical to what the main antagonist of the first game was trying to do. In that game, we had a crazy witch lady named Dahlia, I know, similar names, trying to usher in paradise, but was using her own daughter Alessa as the tool to do so.
I've been expecting you. It was foretold by gyromancy.
It's too early in the story to tell, but I have a good feeling this is gonna play out very similar to the first game. After our interaction with Claudia, the mall has seemingly changed, and I don't just mean the ominous music that's droning in the background. Something feels off, but with all the doors being locked in this hallway, the only way we can go is the elevator. It's here we receive the good old pocket radio, a staple in every Silent Hill game. Now, I'm not gonna question why that shit just fell from the ceiling, but you know what they say, when Silent Hill gives you a radio.
I'm in danger!
Back in Silent Hill 1, I turned off my radio, but after thinking about it, I would say the fear of the unknown is far greater than the fear of surprise. So for this playthrough, I'm going to leave it on. I think the horror experience is better that way. As for this creepy elevator, it's practically begging us to step into the void, and it's here we get another taste of terror.
Is this a dream?
I've tortured myself a prolonged amount of time trying to make sense what the hell was happening in this elevator. And truth be told, you really can't tell. And that seems to be on purpose. The quick flashes and distorted camera angles really messes with your head. It's honestly more terrifying trying to decipher what's happening than for it to be explicitly shown to the player. But I'm a curious guy. I had to know. And after digging around, I fell into a rabbit hole, discovering something only true Silent Hill fans would know. On screen is what the elevator scene looks like if you view it from outside the cutscene. It's hard to look at, a disturbing mishmash of body parts, but there's 3 people here. Heather, of course, this guy named Valtiel, which is a character we'll talk about soon, and this thing. Now, I had no idea what the hell this was until I watched this video. Silent Hill Fukuro. Yeah, that thing, I guess we can call the Fukuro lady, is originally from this animation test, and this model ended up being reused in Silent Hill 3. Again, you'd never know that unless you looked in the game files, but yeah, the monster in the elevator is a half-naked woman straddling a demon. Which, if this is a projection of Heather's nightmare, my god, that's traumatic. But the fuckery is only getting started. Outside the elevator, the game uses audio to really instill paranoia. You're purposely placed in a position where you can hear but never see what's lurking around the corner. I won't lie, this was a good little spook for me because the game is forcing you to muster the courage to poke your head out. And when you finally do, you learn the entire area is infested with double heads. That sound ringing through the hallway is the crunching of corpses being feasted upon. Walking through here is tense, like traversing an Angolian minefield, but the game prepared us for this moment. I didn't mention it earlier, but there was a small room back in the second floor hallway that contained a lonely double head. This room contains the first of what will eventually become a somewhat common item, beef jerky. Using it allows you to distract enemies that prowl on the ground, though its efficacy early on is dubious at best. I can count more times than not where placing this shit did absolutely nothing for me, but if desired, it can really make this section a lot less stressful. Down a set of narrow hallways, we can find a door leading to the first floor lobby. If you can't tell already, Silent Hill 3 is far more aggressive than any previous entry. Every corner feels suffocating. The best way I can explain this gameplay is like navigating an intense panic attack. It's oppressive and unrelenting, but that's part of what makes the game so terrifying. Add in the fact that save points are so scarce, it forces the consequence of death to weigh heavy on the player's mind. It's hard to explain, but all those things combined puts your brain in this never-ending fight or flight response. If Silent Hill 2 is the game that gives you dread, this one creates a unique level of terror. But you know what helps overcome that feeling? A flashlight. In a random room found in the hallway, we can enter a supply closet with functional lights. The idea here is that you read this sign and then turn off the lights, which in turn reveals a flashlight. But every single time I played on the emulator, the flashlight would spawn regardless if I turned the lights on or off, so I just grabbed it. With a light source at hand, we can head to the women's restroom to discover a bottle of bleach. This room is actually the bathroom from the very beginning of the game, but twisted by the Otherworld. Remember earlier I talked about a girl just trying to take a dump? Well, that door is still closed, and you can knock on it, but it will knock back. And trying to leave results in this. It's not even that scary, just a toilet filled with blood, though remember, it's Silent Hill. I wouldn't be surprised if someone sees this as something far more sinister. At a surface level, maybe she died, or if you look deeper, it's imagery resembling a miscarriage, but I personally think that's a stretch. Nevertheless, no matter how you interpret it, it's a neat little spook, especially if you interacted with the door earlier in the game. But this bathroom goes even further, with an Easter egg poking fun at Silent Hill 2. If you happen to have a completed SH2 save on your memory card, interacting with the toilet next to that spook gives you a slightly comedic cutscene.
Oh, forget it. This is way too gross. Who would even think of doing something so disgusting?
I love that the game added these two details, because it's completely optional, but rewards players that go out of their way to explore every nook and cranny. And it does it in a place where you would least expect it, a women's bathroom. We can also delve deeper into the first floor, revisiting the clothing shop where we fought our first closer. Here we'll need to grab a wire hanger, and if you're eagle-eyed, you'll also notice a bulletproof vest hanging on the rack. It's not required, but it does help lower enemy damage at the cost of movement speed. There's also a tiny jump scare if you decide to poke your head behind the counter. At this point, we have everything we need from the first floor. Backtracking to the lobby area, there's a door in the southeast corner, leading to an extremely dark room with only a desk illuminated. Approaching it reveals there's a ladder leading to the second floor, but Heather's too short to grab it. So using the coat hanger we just found, we can pull it down, allowing us to venture upstairs. Heading up the ladder, I had my first oh moment, because the first thing you see is a set of hospital gurneys, and these look identical to the ones found in Silent Hill 1. But I thought to myself, okay, maybe it's just a coincidence. But not even 20 steps away from there is a TV with static playing, and viewing it, we can watch this clip. Yeah, that's Cheryl from Silent Hill 1. This is the same exact clip that plays after Harry gets teleported to the Otherworld. In the first game, he was being a
feisty little thing,
and shortly after finds himself inside the town center. Here, there was a giant display of TVs playing that same exact video. Now, Silent Hill is weird, but they would never play something like this just randomly, so I think this is the game overtly telling us that Heather and Cheryl are the same person. And if that's the case, that also means that Heather is probably Alessa reborn. Now, if you're confused by that statement, wondering how the hell a 17-year-old girl could be two different people at the same time, we'll need to dive a little deeper into Silent Hill 1. In the first game, there was this girl named Alessa that lived in Silent Hill. She was born with psychic powers, and her mother Dahlia wanted to use those abilities to birth God and usher in paradise. If that sounds familiar, yeah, that's the same thing Claudia is trying to do in this game. She wants to do this because that's the goal of her religious cult called the Order. They say they want to usher in paradise, but what they see as paradise would just be unleashing hell on Earth. Eventually, Dahlia became impatient and forced a ritual upon Alessa when she was 7 years old. This ritual, if completed, was supposed to impregnate and allow the birth of God through Alessa. But she didn't want to do any of that, and who could blame her?
No,
So using her psychic powers, she split her soul in half to prevent this from succeeding. This means that one half of the soul remained in Alessa, and the other half was casted far away, which eventually manifested into a newborn baby. Now stick with me, this is all gonna make sense in a second. Harry Mason, the first game's protagonist, finds that newborn girl on the side of the road and adopts her. He names her Cheryl and raises her for 7 years. That's the little girl that appears on the TV we just saw. However, on that 7th year, Cheryl gets the strong urge to visit the town of Silent Hill. Harry agrees and takes her there, but upon arriving, a sudden car crash knocks Harry unconscious and results in the disappearance of Cheryl.
What the fuck? Stop playing!
This kicks off the events of the first game where we explore Silent Hill trying to find our daughter. Ultimately, at the end of that game, Harry learns that Cheryl was the split soul of Alessa. Cheryl's sudden urge to visit Silent Hill was all because Alessa recalled her other half. Shortly after that initial car crash, she refused her soul together, causing baby Cheryl, as Harry knew her, to no longer exist.
Cheryl? Is that Cheryl?
But honestly, Harry's a great guy. Even after learning that, Harry still works to stop Dahlia from birthing God again, and he succeeds. Now, at this point of the story, Alessa's in pretty bad shape and doesn't have much time left to live. In response, she reincarnates herself as a newborn, hoping that this new baby raised under Harry can live a good life, something she never had. And that baby, you guessed it, is Heather Mason, our playable protagonist. Now, let's fast forward to right now. We knew that Heather Mason was that reincarnated newborn, but this inclusion of the gurneys and the TV here in the Otherworld tells me that parts of Cheryl and Alessa are still lingering inside of Heather, which when you think about it, that makes sense why Claudia earlier told her to remember her true self and that her powers are needed to rebirth God. That might also explain why interacting with save points causes her to remember things she didn't personally do. And on top of all of that, we've never stopped and asked ourselves, why are we experiencing these nightmarish enemies in areas? Heather is 17 years old and has never seen a monster in her life until Claudia showed up. That can't be a coincidence, so I wouldn't be surprised if Claudia's appearance awakened Heather's dormant powers. That also means if Claudia's words are true about needing her to rebirth God, Heather might be pregnant with the same God Alessa was trying to prevent and not even know it. Now, I know that's a big bombshell, but regardless, even if we are God's baby mama, we still gotta make our way out of this mall. And to do so, there's a lot of mini puzzles we'll need to solve. Heading up the nearby escalators, we find an Italian restaurant containing quite the repulsive dish, a barbecued dog. Inside the dog carcass contains a charred key which we'll need to open another section of this area. Given that this nightmare is influenced heavily by Alessa and Cheryl's memories, I'm not surprised to see this imagery. With the key in hand, we can backtrack past the TV from earlier to enter a nearby jewelry store. It's here, we can find a walnut. Inspecting it reveals that there's something rattling inside when you shake it, so we'll need to find a way to open it. Heading through the back door, we find ourselves in a pitch black hallway with only the sounds of closers shuffling in the dark. Sneaking past them, we can find a locked door that can be opened using the cooked key. This leads to a small cafe where we can discover one of the most iconic weapons of Silent Hill, the steel pipe. Leaving the cafe, we find ourselves back in the lobby foyer, but we're not the only ones here. The goofy-ass numb bodies from before have spread, but again, you can easily outmaneuver them. Heading where Helen's Bakery used to be, we're greeted with a depressing version of this iconic place. Instead of bread, all we can find is a bottle of detergent. Nearby is a maintenance hallway with a giant fan. I'm not sure if it's just the way the scene is framed, but my paranoid ass really thought this was a test. As if somehow turning off the fan would end up killing me, but that's not what's happening here. Disabling the fan allows us to enter the door on our left where we can find an environmental hazard blocking our way. A horde of moths is preventing us from proceeding, but a little bit of chemistry can solve this issue. Using the bleach we discovered earlier in conjunction with the detergent, we can create chlorine gas. Now, I'm no Walter White, but we just made deadly gas and there's a giant fan. So turning the fan back on, we can commit chemical warfare against the moths, killing every single one in an instant. Past the moths leads us to a room filled with pendulums, which are audibly the most annoying enemy in the game. It's here we can enter a decrepit shop that has been transformed into a torture chamber. There isn't much in this room, but we will need to interact with the vise located on one of the tables. Using the device, we can crack open the walnut we found earlier to discover a moonstone. I get this puzzle's for gameplay reasons, but I find it hard to believe that Heather couldn't have just used a steel pipe to crack the nut open herself. But okay, Silent Hill, I'll play along. Using this newfound moonstone, we can open an ominous red door that's near the place where we found the cooked key. Inside, it appears reality is splitting at the seams, as the only focal point we have is a giant ladder descending into what I can only assume is madness. I have to say, this area is really funny to me, and I can't even look at it the same way, because it's here where I discovered the funniest visual bug I've ever seen in a Silent Hill game. There's a new mechanic in Silent Hill 3 where you can trip and fall to your death. We haven't explored an area where this could be a major issue, but normally if you fall, it looks something like this. But man, in this one spot of the game where this really long ladder is, you can trip and fall to get this goofy ass death animation. But memes aside, down the ladder we find ourselves facing the first boss of the game. This boss is called the Split Worm, and its design is unique to say the least. I believe its phallic shape is intentional, as a lot of the enemies in Silent Hill 3 carry sexual undertones that you might not realize at a first glance. In terms of combat, it's really simple, utilizing mechanics similar to the split head boss from Silent Hill 1. You need to avoid incoming attacks and strike with a firearm once the purple meat shaft opens its tip. Do this enough times and victory will be yours. I have to admit, boss battles have never been great in Silent Hill from a gameplay perspective, but that's not what makes them so iconic. I would say it's the slow burn to each boss. They're never thrown at you just for the sake of it. There's always an agonizing build up to each one. Even if the boss mechanics aren't special from a gameplay lens, they make up for it with how visually memorable they are. I mean, you see a giant purple shaft with human teeth slithering its way through dirt tunnels. I would bet that imagery is going to stay in your mind. With the creature slain, we find ourselves back in the mall, but this time it's somewhat normal.
What? It's the shopping mall just like before.
Even though this normality is refreshing to see, there's this unnerving silence mixed with us being the only people here that makes it so damn creepy. This is a mall after all. You would expect to be filled with people or ambient sounds, but no. It's dead quiet with not a single soul in sight. Or at least that's what the game wants you to think. Trying to leave the mall, we run into a familiar but unwelcomed face.
Heather!
It's you.
What just happened?
Yep, good old Douglas. At least we know that Douglas isn't part of the cult, or at least he says he's not. However, we do get him to admit that yeah, he was hired by Claudia to find Heather.
Claudia? What about her? She asked me to find you, that's all.
So you are one of them.
Claudia did all that? Look, I was just hired to find you. I'm not on anybody's side. I don't know anything about this. Why don't you start by telling me what happened here? And that monster? What the hell is even that?
It's also interesting to note that he says he saw a monster, but didn't specify which one. So we can assume that he's definitely seeing some of the things we are, but might not be in the same level of danger.
Maybe you're just an innocent bystander, but I can't feel sorry for you because you dragged me into this. You know, if you hadn't found me...
What are you talking about? What's so special about you anyway?
If I knew that, I wouldn't be so confused, would I?
Our conversation with Douglas doesn't prove to be all that helpful, so Heather kindly tells him to fuck off.
Where are you going?
I'm taking the subway home.
What should I do?
Hell if I know.
And thus, we begin our journey into the subway. From what I can gather, the subway is an infamous part of the game. You either love it or you hate it. And I would assume the reason why is because this section of the game onward is a lot of moving from point A to point B without a lot of story beats. It can get a little tedious at times, though there are some interesting interactions sprinkled throughout. As we venture deeper into the subway, we can find a newspaper telling us how the tracks are high accident areas, where people intentionally or accidentally unalive themselves. It also has this little piece at the end that says, hey, you should be careful around these areas or it could happen to you. And that wasn't a false warning. If you go to a certain area of the subway, a spirit will push you onto the tracks where a sudden death event will occur. If you're unable to pull yourself back up in time, that's game over. This is really neat because it won't happen unless you read the newspapers, but I also believe it's implying that whatever Heather fears can be projected into reality. But if we want to escape the subway, we'll need to visit the North End area where there'll be a pack of doubleheads lurking in the dark. Within this dark room, we can go down a set of stairs that leads to a dead end containing a nutcracker. Using this tool, we can break a chain door, giving us access to a lower level containing an abandoned subway car. Entering from the front, you can discover shotgun shells, and towards the middle of the car, we receive a very nice gift. Our very own shotgun. I'm not sure why it's wrapped in a nice neat little bow, but it's an amazing gesture. As I inch back to the front of the car, the sounds of our radio were going crazy. This area of the subway is extremely dark, but as you get closer and closer, you can finally see what's been causing the radio to go off. Yeah, that's the insane cancer, an absolute beefcake of a monster. Thankfully, this big bitch is one sleepy boy, and we can just slip right by, but going forward, this enemy has the potential to ruin our day. Unlike the closers where you can normally run past them, the insane cancers are usually placed in areas where you have to confront them. Best believe our new shoddy is gonna be dropping bodies. Heading even deeper into the subway, we find ourselves at what appears to be a dead end. I didn't know what to do for the longest time until I realized there's this red door slightly out of frame. I mean, look at it. It's practically calling our name, just begging us to open it. So I walked to it, and in true Silent Hill fashion, this shit was a trap. Not only is the door locked, but a swarm of doubleheads has spawned on top of us, along with the sounds of a train barreling right at us. At this point, you have less than 10 seconds to get back where you were, or you can kiss all of your sweet progress goodbye. I gotta say, I feel bad for all the gamers that didn't know what to do at this part. If you didn't find the save point for this area, you'd be repeating this entire subway section from the very beginning. If that's not scary, I don't know what is. However, this train has been a blessing and a curse because despite trying to kill us, it's given us an opportunity to escape through a newly opened door. Entering it, we find ourselves in motion. This section is pretty cool and probably one of my favorite areas of the early game. We find ourselves progressing from car to car, trying to make our way to the conductor's cabin. However, I must say, don't try to go backwards because each time you move from a car, the previous one detaches. If you are a psychopathic adrenaline junkie, you can see this interesting view of Heather from the back of the car, but just like how Icarus flew too close to the sun, if you move too close to these railroad tracks, you get a one-way ticket to becoming a meat crayon. I'm telling you, this game is filled with so many hidden death animations and environmental hazards, it's not even funny. But I have to say, I respect the developers big time for coding this in. You'll quickly discover you aren't the only passengers here. Numb bodies have found their way on the train, and it's such a confined space that you'll probably need to fight back, and preferably with a melee weapon. I really like that as you move from car to car, some of the units lose power, so you end up in these uncanny situations, second guessing if something's lurking in the dark. Oh jeez. This all comes to a climax when you realize in one of the final train cars, you're forced to face an insane cancer. It's such a confined space and he's so massive that running past him is borderline impossible without taking damage. So as promised, we pull out the good old shotty to drop some bodies. It's shortly after this insane cancer that the train abruptly comes to a halt with all the doors swinging wide open. This marks the end of the subway, bringing us to the next area of the game, the sewers. I genuinely don't have much to say about this area. It could be worse, and for sure it's way better than Silent Hill 1's sewer section. But again, it's a lot of dark and damp areas filled to the brim with giant numb bodies, pendulums, and a lot of dead ends. I can't say that it's pleasant. But there are some really cool highlights here. For starters, we can enter a blood-soaked room containing a rather unorthodox weapon, a medieval maul. This thing isn't up to my taste due to how slow it is, but I'm sure there's some good use cases for it. Additionally, the puzzle for this area involves finding a wine bottle, then filling said bottle with kerosene. We need to do this because a ladder leading deeper into the sewers has been flooded with dirty water. Using the oil-filled wine bottle, you can refill a hoist machine, allowing us to power it back on, pumping out all the dirty water in the process. From here, you'll make your way through more open sewer areas, eventually finding yourself crossing sewer bridges. There's a neat little spook here as the first bridge you cross changes the camera angle, but ultimately nothing happens. However, it's when you go across the second bridge, you can find a brand new creature lurking just below your feet.
Did you pray today?
This is made even scarier when you have to visit a room across the bridge to find a hairdryer. But when you backtrack over the bridge again, that creature is nowhere to be found. Creepy sewer demons aside, you might be asking yourself, why the hell do we need a hairdryer? And that's because eventually, you'll find a dimly lit office area with some cryptic warnings. The first being a note from someone talking about how a monster living in the water has killed 2 of his buddies. There's also signage on the floor saying, quote, "Danger, keep out." And like most warnings in this game, it shouldn't be taken lightly, as entering the dangerous door, you discover a disgusting amount of blood trails leading directly into the water. Now this area is really small, so the only way you can go is forward on a metal walking bridge, but this is a trap. If you decide to go forward right away, this happens. The amount of bullshit instant death sections in this game is really annoying on a first playthrough, but at least the devs were nice enough to put a save point right before this area. What you're supposed to do is to find that hairdryer we picked up not too long ago and plug it into an outlet near the door. This allows us to electrify the water, killing the monster before it can strangle us to death. This area is already very disorienting with its maze-like area design and monsters coming out from every square inch. So adding this instant death puzzle really pissed me off something fierce, but Eventually, I got over it. With the monster dead, we can finally cross this section, leading to yet another open area that loops into a very long hallway. Overall, I will say this area can be mentally exhausting and might honestly be the breaking point for some players. But I will say the horror experience here is quite the trip. Visually, this area is too dark to do anything groundbreaking, so it makes up for that with excellent sound design. There's so many areas in the sewers where the audio just really messes with you. Most notably is this final hallway where halfway through, you hear what I could honestly describe as pure terror. But this sound is how you know you've made it out of the sewers and into the construction site. This place genuinely scared the shit out of me. You find yourself back outside, but it's nighttime, with hardly any lighting to guide your way. And the only sounds being emitted is the crunching of your own footsteps. As you bend the corner, you discover these towering white sheets blanketing the area, preventing you from seeing what's around you. The only way you can go is a set of double doors on this unfinished building. Stepping inside, your ears are assaulted with one of the eeriest tracks I've ever heard in a Silent Hill game. This is even creepier when you realize almost every area you've been up to this point has been dead quiet unless enemies were around. As you make your way upstairs, you hear sounds that indicate you're not the only person here. But this is odd because trying to open the second, third, or fourth level doors, you realize they are locked or barred shut due to some of the floors caving in. This leaves us with only one place to go, and that's the 5th floor. Upon entering, the music fades out and we're left with only our footsteps again. It's here when I entered this bathroom and almost shit myself. You can clearly hear the sounds of footsteps not only getting louder, but faster, as if someone is making their way up to the 5th floor. It's also the framing of this bathroom that prevents you from looking back out in the hallway, so you genuinely have no idea what the hell is waiting for you outside. But thankfully, walking back out, you realize that nothing is there. But good lord, was that build-up intense. It's moments like this that are ingrained into my mind when I think about Silent Hill 3. Outside of this bathroom, we can find a door leading into an open section of the 5th floor. It's here we'll need to use this mattress as a way to drop down to a lower level while also breaking our fall. But I wouldn't recommend doing that just yet, as there's a cool little Easter egg here. If you shine your flashlight at the wall, you'll notice that one section is a different color from the rest. Using any blunt melee weapon, you can hit the wall, causing a unique item to fall out. This is the silencer, which can be applied to your pistol if you want, but it does lower the damage. Also, Silent Hill isn't a stealth game and there's never really been stealth mechanics, so I probably won't use it often. But supposedly the silencer here is a nod to the Metal Gear Solid series, which is also owned by Konami. But enough about bodies and walls, we have a hole we need to jump down, and upon doing so, we find ourselves on the 2nd floor. The music here sounds like an industrial heartbeat that's only a few skips away from exploding. Heading through a hole in the wall, you're instantly greeted by 2 pendulums. I decided I didn't want to fool with that, but backtracking where we just came from, you can find an insane cancer resting in the same spot we dropped from. Yeah, this game just loves to punish you for backtracking, but it might explain the loud ambient footsteps we heard earlier. With nowhere else to go, you're forced to confront the pendulums on the rusty scaffolding that eventually leads to a nearby office building. Within the office building, we find ourselves in the reception area of what appears to be a mannequin company. I quickly discovered this when I entered a room full of them. They even bleed. To get to this area, you'll need to visit one of the offices to find a map. Using this, we can find a stairwell where we can make our way up to the 5th floor. It's here you'll discover the Gallery of Fine Arts. There's a few art pieces that can be found around the room, but it's the wall with an empty painting that gives some subtle characterization. Inspecting it shows that a piece called Flame Purifies All used to be here, but it's Heather's comment about it that shows pieces of Alessa breaking through. Heather states that she's not too fond of fire, it's scary somehow, and that somehow is because when Alessa was a kid, she was almost burned to death during Dahlia's ritual. It's moments like this that makes you wonder how much of Alessa is actually influencing Heather. For all it matters to me, Heather is a new person, so it's a shame she's being shackled by the trauma of her past lives. In the back of this art gallery, we can find a screwdriver along with a very good weapon. It's here we can find a katana. This is probably hands down the best melee weapon you can get on your first playthrough. It swings fast and hits hard. What more could we ask for? Normally I would avoid the numb bodies, but using the katana, they go down in only 2 to 3 hits. It's also near these numb bodies we can find an auto parts office containing a jack. With the screwdriver and jack in hand, we can head back down to the second floor where we found the office map. In that same room, there's a drawer that's stuck. Using the screwdriver, we can shimmy it open, discovering a rope. As a kid, this would have flew over my head, but now as an adult, seeing a long piece of rope inside an office cubicle morbidly makes a lot of sense. With the rope in hand, we can head to a nearby elevator that's cracked slightly open. This is where we can use the jack we just found to extend the doors fully. Allowing us to use the rope to belay ourselves down one level. It's here you'll discover a furniture store that at first glance doesn't seem all that interesting. But it's not until you enter a back room where you can discover an oddly placed bathtub. Interacting with it, we get far more than we could have ever asked for.
I knew it.
Oh no, not again. Did she do this too?
This right here is what separates Heather from the typical Silent Hill protagonist. She's fueled by this unbridled rage at the situation. It's not, oh my god, I'm gonna die. I mean, sure, Heather does get scared at times, but her general attitude towards the events happening is one of annoyance, which I find extremely fitting for a teenager. But that rage she's feeling is only going to bubble up even more because this next area is really gonna test the player's patience. This is the same office building from before, but mangled by the Otherworld. The imagery here is eye bleach levels of nightmarish. I don't even think words can do it justice, it just leaves you speechless. It's also in this area we encounter a new enemy, but one we've actually seen before. If you remember long ago when we were in the sewer section, we saw an unknown entity below a bridge. This is that same exact creature, and like most enemies in the game, it's quite annoying. It's called the Slurper, and these things are extremely aggressive. A single hit has the ability to knock the player down, even stun locking them from time to time. Or if it really wants to mess with you, it can grab a hold of your leg, forcing you into an unconsented game of tug of war.
Can I please bite a chunk out of that ass?
But thanks to our shiny new katana, we can swiftly chop this one down. It's within this nightmare world we can finally start to understand some of the key players and motives behind everything that's been happening so far. In a closed off room, we can find a note that says, "Find the Holy One. Kill her?" And upon flipping the note over, we can see it's a picture of us. Now, we can reasonably assume this was taken by Douglas, since he was a private investigator hired to find us. But having the motivation to kill us doesn't seem in character for him. Thankfully, for better or worse, it doesn't take us long to discover who wrote this, as entering a door right next to this photo, we can discover someone completely new.
Heather. That's what you're called now, isn't it?
This is Vincent, a pretentious smug bastard that has scumbag vibes written all over him. He's a textbook example of a manipulator, but if you listen carefully to his words, he does confirm a lot of the things we've been speculating.
So you say, but how do I know you're not with her?
Her? You mean Claudia? Please don't lump me together with her. She was totally brainwashed by that crazy old hag. Well, I guess crazy old hag is a bit harsh. She is your mother, after all.
Him saying crazy old hag is referring to Dahlia. That just reinforces that, yeah, Heather is the reincarnation of Alessa.
So Harry didn't tell you anything. I guess he hid the truth to keep you on his side, eh? That figures. He's a pretty sneaky guy.
Don't talk about my dad like that!
Sorry. I apologize. Please, calm down.
We're also treated to more evidence that shows Harry didn't tell Heather anything about her past, which that's up for you to decide if that was a good or bad parenting decision from Harry. But most importantly, this scene really reinforces the love Heather has for her dad. That's a raw reaction that comes when someone insults the person you love the most. This tells us that Harry isn't just her dad, but honestly an integral part of her world.
Why not enjoy yourself a bit longer?
Enjoy? I feel like I'm going crazy. Does this place get to you at all?
Oh, it gets to me all right. I find it most fascinating.
This entire interaction with Vincent proves to me that he has some level of control over the Otherworld. He's existing within this space way too carefree and calmly, meaning that even though he states he dislikes Claudia, he is still associated with her in one way or another. And this is all assuming we can trust his word, but there is a small piece of evidence that tells me he really might be at odds with Claudia. The photo we found before meeting him, stating if we should be killed or not, was probably written by Vincent. This is interesting because killing us would go completely against what Claudia is trying to achieve. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can give birth if you're fucking dead, bruh. Regardless, since we are alive after talking to him, it's safe to say that he probably has other plans, but time will only tell. After our cryptic chat with Vincent, we'll need to pick up this bottle of Oxidol, which I didn't know this at first, but that's the name for hydrogen peroxide in Japan. With the chemicals in our possession, we can make our way to the Otherworld elevator. Thank the Lord, this one actually works, so no need for any rope this time. If you fancy your way to the first floor, you can discover an otherworldly creature that is quite deceiving. Its appearance is downright hellish, so you would think getting close to it would surely be fatal, but no. It's docile and doesn't harm the player whatsoever. Even hitting it with any weapon does absolutely nothing. The only hint we get on how to stop it is a fairy tale book directly in front of it. The premise of the book is that there was this king that had an unstoppable monster at its gates. Getting even remotely close to it would result in certain death. The king sent his best knights, but they, alongside their horses, were all swallowed in one gulp. That's when the king summoned the local priestess to defeat the monster, but the book abruptly ends. It's here we'll need to discover the other pages to figure out how they vanquished this seemingly invincible foe. Which, if it isn't overtly obvious, this story parallels the current predicament we're in. On the same floor, we can find what appears to be a bar or cafe of sorts. There's an insane cancer sleeping in the corner, but you can easily sneak past where you'll discover a mini fridge containing pork liver. I swear, this entry has some of the most obscure puzzle pieces I've ever seen. Back on the elevator, we can head up to the 5th floor where you can discover a lighter in one of the office rooms. It's here that I made a very interesting connection. Within this room, we can discover a bowl of cigarettes. Normally, I wouldn't bring attention to something so mundane, but inspecting it reveals that Heather used to smoke cigarettes at one point. This made me think, cigarettes are known to cause cancer, so what if Heather's old habits are a part of what helped manifest the insane cancers we see in game? game. Again, it's a crackpot theory that's probably not even true, but it's interesting that you can loosely tie meanings to monsters like that. I feel like that's part of the charm that has allowed Silent Hill as a series to endure for so long. On the same floor with the cigarettes, we can head back to the art gallery, but this time the picture that was originally missing is now here. Looking at it in full detail, we can see this is supposed to represent the burning of Alessa, which just goes to show how twisted the narrative is within the cult. This photo depicts the burning of Alessa as this graceful and holy act, however, that's far from the truth. But just like Alessa, we'll need to burn this painting as well. Using the oxidol, which is just hydrogen peroxide, in combination with the lighter and pork liver, we can start a fire strong enough to engulf the entire photo in flames. What remains is a hidden door leading us even deeper into the nightmare. We're instantly greeted with more outlandish imagery. Multiple photos of ears bleeding and a mouth on top. The only thing I think this represents is pure suffering. Within this area, we can find the second part of that fairy tale. Long story short, the priestess tries to calm down the monster with words, insisting that it's bad to eat people. The monster, who clearly doesn't give a shit, kills her anyway. But that's not the end of the story. We'll need to find the final part to discover how they defeated it. We quickly learned that this secret passage brought us to the 4th floor. There isn't much here besides hallways full of slurpers and the occasional jump scare. We will need to make our way to an office room containing coins. It's here we can pick up a silver coin and use it on a nearby soda machine. Doing so, we can find a life insurance key inside a soda can. I can excuse a lot of weird shit in Silent Hill, but this one just doesn't make any sense to me. Regardless, we can use this key to unlock a hallway on the 1st floor. In said hallway, we can find a blood-soaked room containing the final part of the fairy tale. In the end, we learn it wasn't bows and swords, nor fists or bullets. What finally killed the monster was JJK level cursed speech. Reading aloud this certain phrase from the story.
Tu fui ego eres. Weird writing. What was that?
Results in the world forcibly shifting again, erasing all nearby monsters out of existence. This means heading back where that giant creature was, he's gone. We can finally step outside, and it's here we discover a residential area. This section looks massive due to the far out camera angle, but it's all misleading. You only need to head down a certain alleyway that leads us directly to the Daisy Villa apartment complex. Holy sugar honey iced tea, we did it. Our entire goal up to this point was to get here. After the mall, subway, sewer, and office building, we're finally home. In our inventory, we can see that our home is room 102, and it was at this point I was beyond excited to see Harry Mason again. So you best believe when I entered this room, I was not expecting this.
Oh. Dad, I'm home. Listen, something really crazy's going on. I think we should... Dad? Dad?
No! Sorry. No!
This pissed me off more than anything. It's not even that Harry Mason died, but the fact that they killed him off screen. This game has very few interactions between characters compared to previous entries, so this was the one interaction I was really looking forward to, but thematically, I get it. It's a revenge story, so it makes sense he was killed off, and it gives Heather a personal reason to get more involved, but the execution just feels hollow. Sadly, we don't even get time to grieve our father, as there's a trail of bloody footsteps leading to the rooftop. Whoever killed Harry is probably up there.
Did you do this?
You're late.
But why? Why?
Revenge for 17 years ago, for one thing. If not for him, our dream would have come true. And then he took you away from us.
I'll get you for this!
There is another reason. To fill your heart with hatred. You will birth a god and build an eternal paradise.
It's interesting to note that Claudia says she did all this to incite hatred, and she practically confirms our theory about Heather being pregnant with God. Which, when you think about all this, it's beyond fucked up. Everything that's happened so far takes place within a span of a couple hours. Heather has been stalked by Douglas, tormented and forcibly impregnated by Claudia, and had the only person she truly cared about murdered when she finally makes it back home. This is a level of terror that no other Silent Hill has explored thus far. It's violating and dehumanizing, and worst of all, this nightmare is only just getting started.
He's the one who killed your father. I merely gave the order. So, what will you do?
Claudia also drops two major bombshells. The first is that this thing was what killed Harry Mason, and surprisingly, we haven't been in Silent Hill this entire time. She says she'll be waiting for us there. As for this thing, we'll need to kill it if we want to progress through the game. This boss fight is called the Missionary, and it's a humanoid creature that's intelligent enough to follow commands by Claudia. Honestly, this creature isn't that intimidating, so I'm surprised that such a normal enemy was able to kill Harry. I mean, the guy killed a pseudo-god that shot lightning. Surely he could handle this. I will admit this boss is quite fast, but that's really the only thing going for it. My strategy involved stabbing it repeatedly with the katana when it charged at me directly. This proved quite effective, only trading blows ever so often. After I bullied it enough times, it just dropped dead. Honestly, this fight was so disappointing, even more so when you realize this is what killed Harry Mason. Heading downstairs, we run into Douglas again.
I don't know what to say.
Then don't say anything. I'm fine, so just get out of here and leave me alone already!
Calm down.
Calm down? How am I supposed to do that? My father is dead! He's murdered! Get out! This is all your fault! If it weren't for you...
I'm sorry.
Then go!
If it'll make you feel better, I will.
Despite telling him to leave, the next scene shows Heather and Douglas having an impromptu burial for Harry. The best they could do was some flowers and covering his body with a white bedsheet. In this scene, we learn what our next goal will be, and it's simple: kill Claudia, as an act of revenge.
When I find her, I'll kill her myself.
Revenge doesn't solve anything.
Maybe not, but that's what I'm going to do.
Although Douglas doesn't approve of our goal, he still offers a ride to Silent Hill, probably because he feels somewhat responsible for Harry's death.
I'll bring the car around back. Come by and we'll finish saying goodbye.
You know, you might die too.
That's fine. Nobody's gonna cry over my grave.
After this, we can look around the apartment if we want, and if you inspect Harry's chair, you get a gut-punching statement from Heather. I do recommend that you visit Heather's room, as there's a new weapon called the stun gun. It's an interesting one, but you should probably save it for later. Heading outside, we can meet back up with Douglas and learn he just ran into Vincent of all people.
I just met some guy named Vincent.
Vincent?
He's a friend of yours, right?
Supposedly, we need to head to Silent Hill in search of a man named Leonard. We also get a postmortem gift from Harry, a notebook that describes all the things we've talked about regarding Heather's childhood and the events of Silent Hill 1. The contents of the book gets cryptically explained in the car ride to Silent Hill with Douglas.
No, I'm just trying to remember. My childhood. Something terrible happened in Silent Hill 17 years ago.
I normally wouldn't have an issue with this, but someone decided it was a good idea to put this convoluted lore dump here and then play music that has vocals on top of it. It's distracting and messy. I love how Douglas is just listening to all of this being like, damn bro, that's crazy.
That's crazy. Powers? That's crazy.
Eventually, we arrived in Silent Hill, where we stayed the night in a motel. Like every cliche horror movie, the gang decides they're gonna split up.
I'm gonna head for that Leonard guy's house. You check out the hospital.
Because that's just a really good idea in a Silent Hill game. Outside, we find ourselves exploring Silent Hill. Oh my, what the? Okay, that's better. You can explore a large part of Silent Hill here, but you'll be doing all that for literally nothing. There isn't any loot or secrets to explore. The best you'll get is that you can visit the Heaven's Night bar, but that's only if you want a little bit of Silent Hill 2 nostalgia. Its inclusion feels more like fan service than anything. I don't see how this serves a point in the story. You'll also notice the hospital we need to visit is Brookhaven and not the Alchemilla one we explored in Silent Hill 1. I guess this makes sense as it's a mental hospital, but if this is the story of Alessa reborn, I think the other one would be far more fitting. Inside the hospital, the first thing you'll hear is the sounds of squishy footsteps. It's here we discover the most iconic enemy in Silent Hill, the nurses. After putting them down, we can enter a nearby room to find a map of the Brookhaven Hospital. If you decide to enter the visitor's room, you'll discover a peculiar diary and toy doll. This is a love letter, but not just any love letter, it's written directly to Heather Mason. Yikes. We learned that the author is a man by the name of Stanley Coleman, who is quite obsessive with Heather. Despite Stanley's diary suggesting that he's watching her in real time, I believe he's just a manifestation of Silent Hill. Heather has an intense fear of stalkers, so I believe this was the catalyst for his existence. To some of you watching, Stanley's notes might not seem that terrifying, but if you're someone who's dealt with an obsessive individual, especially in the romantic sense, these notes can hit very close to home because you know firsthand how emotionally and mentally draining it is to deal with someone who craves and feels entitled to every piece of you. Add that on top of everything Heather has gone through so far, and you can see what I mean how this game is just a never-ending nightmare for her. Almost every person Heather has interacted with hasn't cared about her. They're just obsessed with what they can do or gain from her. It's sickening to see. Using a nearby elevator, we can head up to the second floor. In one of the rooms, we can find nail polish remover and a bottle of perfume. The perfume is an interesting item that increases the aggressiveness of enemies. This isn't all that useful on your first playthrough, but it will make sense if you do a new game plus. On a nearby wall, there's a little riddle involving numbers. Solving it gives us the code 8634. Using this code unlocks a new section where you can discover even more nurses. This hallway has a lot of doors, but first you'll need to enter this morgue to discover a tattooed corpse. On the body, it says, "The start time is my key." This makes sense when you enter another room and hear an alarm go off. As you turn the alarm off, you need to make sure to keep note of what the time was when it stopped, as it's random for each playthrough. In mine, the time was 7:15. This will be the code for a briefcase that's on the bed. So my code ended up being 0715. Inside, we can find an instant camera that'll be useful shortly. Heading back to the first floor, we can enter room C4, which I would assume was Stanley's room at one point. His latest note finds him irritated that we haven't taken his creepy doll, and trust that we won't, because bro, that's just weird. Next to that is a childlike collage of various items glued to the wall, ranging from a spoon, dead beetle, and even a Christmas card. But we don't care about any of that. We want the key that's stuck in the middle. Thankfully, the nail polish remover we discovered earlier can help us break it free, discovering it's the stairwell key. Using this allows us to access the first floor stairwell. Doing so, we can finally reach the basement, discovering a Jacob's Ladder reference, that fully functioning Uzi, and a reason to use the instant camera. This gives us a code written in blood, 5678. It's on the 3rd floor. We can input this code, unlocking a long corridor of patient rooms. In room 1, we can find a piece of foreshadowing for Silent Hill 4. This magazine says Hope House, but that's just a translation error. In room 5, we can find the final Stanley Coleman note, which seems to confirm his passing, but he cryptically warns us to not trust Leonard. But it's room 12 where we can finally learn more about Mr. Leonard. As you walk in, a telephone will spring to life, and upon picking it up, we find that Leonard is on the other side.
Hello?
Claudia.
No, I'm not.
Don't lie to me, Claudia. You're always trying to run from your responsibilities. Have you come to apologize? Or maybe you still don't realize how foolish you've been. The salvation of all mankind. Ah, what a ridiculous dream.
Wait, just listen to me for a second.
I've heard enough from you already. How did you turn out this way? Where did I go wrong?
Listen to me already. I'm not Claudia.
You're not Claudia.
My name is Heather.
Heather.
Who are you?
Leonard Wolfe. I'm sorry. I thought you were my daughter.
Claudia is your daughter?
We learned that Leonard Wolfe is Claudia's dad. They aren't on good terms, and supposedly Leonard wants to help us help him stop Claudia.
Heather, will you help me?
Help you?
I'm locked up in here, and I must stop Claudia.
Where are you now?
I'm not sure myself, but the door is at the end of the hall on the 2nd floor. I think I can be of help to you. I have a seal. Please.
A seal?
If Stanley's notes are anything to go by, we should be cautious. After this conversation, you'll notice a new door on the 2nd floor has materialized. Typically these doors are numbered, but this new door has a blank on it. Entering it, we'll find a metal labyrinth of sorts. After many twists and turns, you'll finally go down a hallway as metal gates close behind you. Eventually ensnaring us into a box. The only thing we can do is interact with a seal of Metatron planted on the wall, and it's here we get a cutscene from Silent Hill 1.
Still has an unusually high beat. Eyes don't open. Getting a pulse, but just barely breathing. Why? What is keeping that child alive?
That was Lisa Garland, a nurse who tended to Alessa after she was badly burned. After that cutscene, we find ourselves in a very red room containing a ladder and the sounds of a heartbeat pumping. As we make our way up, we see Valtiel yet again. I mentioned in the mall elevator that I would speak more about him, and I think this is the perfect time to do so. If it wasn't for outside material, a player would have no idea who or what this thing is. He shows up periodically in games, specifically when Heather transitions to the Otherworld, but he's never mentioned once by any characters, and there isn't a single note in game referencing him. But viewing his actions, we can determine he is some sort of angel or hand of God. His design is similar to Pyramid Head, but he doesn't appear to be an executioner, unless you're a nurse. I don't know if beating up women just gets his rocks off, but goddamn does he have a grudge against these nurses. Valtiel is typically seen turning vows, which might be an indication he has control over when things are shifted into the Otherworld. But I would assume his primary objective is the birth of God, which is probably why he's so docile towards Heather, but loves to beat other women. If you want to get even creepier, there's a rare chance if you die, he can be seen dragging your body away.
Oh, brother, whoa, now. You got too much dip on your chip.
I've only ever seen this once, but it scared the living shit out of me. At first I thought he was gonna have his way with Heather, but that's not exactly what's happening. It's theorized that he's dragging Heather away to resurrect God within. I don't know if that means he's bringing Heather back to life or transferring the fetus of God to somewhere else. Regardless, this guy is the most mysterious character in the Silent Hill series, despite having so much influence. He's like an eldritch entity. Above Valtiel though, we get an explanation as to why we saw the cutscene of Lisa Garland. It's because she's right here. Apparently the developers wanted to make a custom model for Lisa, but they didn't have the time, so they reused the Fukuro Lady asset. This tells us that after the events of Silent Hill 1, Lisa has been damned to eternal torture. It's quite sad to see. At the top of the ladder, we find ourselves back in the Brookhaven Hospital, but it's beyond repair. The Otherworld has transformed this place into a living organ with fleshy walls pulsating with blood and blurry textures that are giving me a borderline migraine. As you make your way through the hospital, you'll notice the slurpers from before are now crimson red and pulsating in blood. It's also in this area you'll discover the most iconic scare of Silent Hill 3. This is completely optional, but entering one of the rooms, you'll discover a giant mirror, and we know that Heather hates those. On the other side, you see your reflection, but the room is different. You see red veins expanding all of the floor and walls. With nothing to interact with, you'll be tempted to leave, but that's when the game gets you. The door is now locked, and squishy sounds can be heard pulsating from the mirror. As you turn around, you'll notice a cancerous hole expanding all over the player, but it's on the other side. It can't possibly harm us. But that's when you notice it's spilling over into our room, and eventually the mirror stops. The body on the other side has detached from us. It's at this point, you gotta get the hell out of this room. The door is now unlocked, but if you're curious what happens if you didn't leave, this is your fate. But oh boy, this isn't the only thing the hospital has up its sleeves. On the second floor, you can find a room containing a ringing payphone. Answering it, you get a creepy birthday message.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Oh, I forgot your name.
Who are you?
Oh, okay, thanks. Happy birthday, dear. Who are you? Happy birthday to you. Happy 31st birthday.
This whole interaction is Silent Hill trying to ask Heather, who is she? Is she Alessa or is she Heather?
Happy birthday to you!
But you're wrong. It's not my birthday.
Identity is a pretty big theme in Silent Hill 3. We're slowly watching Heather come to terms with who she truly is. But enough with the creepy stuff, let's work to get our way out of here. In a nearby room, we can find what appears to be Valtiel trapped in a box. But that's not why we're here. There's a trash can in the corner containing a plastic bag. Taking this bag to the third floor, we can find a hanging body that's dripping blood. Using the bag, we can fill it with this man's juices, giving us a plastic bag with blood. Afterwards, we can head to the basement to solve the crematorium puzzle. This one isn't too bad once you decode the cipher. There are 10 bodies in this room, numbered 0 through 9. If you were to view the bodies from a top-down angle, it would look something like this. We'll use this as our key to decipher a set of Roman numerals etched into brick. Approaching the incinerator, we can find the code we need to open it. Putting that all together, our code ends up being 1072, unlocking the door and giving us the cremated key. Taking this key back up to the first floor, we can open a set of double doors where we can unlock the next area. It's also here I finally used that stun gun and I actually like it. If used against a humanoid enemy, it almost guarantees a knockdown. It's shortly past this section we can find an eerie room with an altar of sorts. It's here we can use the bag filled with blood to manifest a hidden ladder. And if this game has taught me one thing about long ladders and save points, this is probably going to end up being a boss fight. As we descend the ladder, we find ourselves in a sewer of sorts, but it's here we hear a familiar voice call out our name.
Heather?
Yeah?
It appears that Leonard is down here.
Thank you. Now I can finally leave here.
He seems docile at first and explains that he dislikes his daughter because Claudia believes paradise should be for all of mankind, whereas Leonard believes it should only go to God's chosen ones.
Salvation of all mankind? Ha! Why must we reward even the unbelievers?
The game even foreshadows this point as there was a child's drawing that in hindsight was referring to Leonard. It's when Heather states that she doesn't believe in either one's ideologies that Leonard snaps.
Go ahead and think whatever you want.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that I don't think the way you guys do. I don't want any part of that kind of paradise.
You're an unbeliever. You deceived me.
I didn't deceive you. We were both just wrong about each other. I thought you were a normal person.
So you tried to trick me so you can run off with my seal, eh? Heretic! You plan to destroy God!
I told you I wasn't trying to trick anyone. What is this seal thing anyway?
Don't play innocent. You can't fool me anymore.
And this reaction shouldn't be surprising, as the reason he was locked up in the first place was because he stabbed someone over a religious dispute, according to a note found on the first floor. And after Leonard threatens to get violent with Heather, that's when we see his true form.
Leonard? Is that you?
Death to all who turn their backs on God!
Is every person here a mental case? Well, I guess you're not a person anyway.
Thus, the boss fight begins. Off the rip, you'll notice the shotgun easily puts Leonard on his ass. It's almost comical how goofy his falling animation is. Despite this boss being very simple, it's one of my favorites due to the genuine twist here. You finally believe you met someone human that could help you out against the cult, only to realize Leonard is batshit crazy and has the appearance of a monster. It's also the music here is so good. I will say the longest part about this fight is waiting for Leonard to resurface from the water so you can deal damage, but after enough shots, he goes down no problem. This whole fight is interesting to me because Claudia killed our father, so we came all the way to Silent Hill to stand on business and do the same thing to her father. I'm telling you, revenge is a never-ending cycle of hatred. Leonard's death results in us teleporting out of the Otherworld. It appears it's now sunset, so it's probably been a long time since we've seen or heard from Douglas.
Leonard's not here anymore. I guess I should head back to the motel now. I hope Douglas is okay.
As we begin to leave, our foot stumbles on a medallion of sorts.
Huh? What's this?
Picking it up appears to be a talisman in our inventory. This must be the item Vincent wanted us to retrieve and the thing Leonard was so protective of. So you would assume it does something important. As we leave the hospital, we get a cutscene that shows an interaction between Claudia and Vincent.
Why did you send her to my father?
Was that wrong?
It's your fault that he...
Oh, but surely it's a good thing. It means he was one of God's beloved, no?
Those who mock God will never receive salvation. You'll go to hell, Vincent.
We can see there's a rift between these two. Vincent doesn't want to birth God because he cares more about earthly pleasures. We can assume the birth of God would disrupt his lavish lifestyle. This gives me similar vibes to Dr. Kaufman from Silent Hill 1.
I know about the pleasures of this world.
But it's also what Vincent says afterwards that gives some context between Claudia and her father.
You hated your father, didn't you? I saw the way he hit you, and kicked you, and made you cry. The memory of his cruelty is forever burned into my mind.
It seems as though there was a lot of physical abuse between Claudia and her father, which to me seems like it parallels the abuse between Dahlia and Alessa. If that's the case, it starts to shed light on why Claudia has the motives she does. It also paints a picture that generational trauma is running rampant through the cult.
You don't understand. None of you do.
After this cutscene, we're back in the town of Silent Hill, where we'll need to make our way to the motel we originally started in. It's here we can run into Vincent again, where he says Douglas left us a message, but also lies about talking with Claudia.
Where's Douglas?
He went out. But he left a message for you.
Was there someone else here just now?
No, just me.
Heather doesn't know that, but we, the player, do. It's here Vincent tells us that Douglas wants us to find the church on the other side of the lake. The best way to get there is through the amusement park.
If you're going, you better go through the amusement park. It's probably the only way in now.
Given this is the only information we have to trust it, but this doesn't seem like something Douglas would say.
Douglas really said that?
What's wrong? You don't trust me?
But as always, we do what we're told and we find ourselves going down Nathan Avenue, ending up where the game originally started. The Lakeside Amusement Park, but this time around, we get an explanation as to why it was already in the Otherworld. Upon entering, we develop contractions again and the world shifts almost instantly.
Oh, hell.
Since we've already been here before, it's only noteworthy to show the few things that have changed. Remember that candy store that seemed useless at the beginning of the game? Well, it still is, but this time you'll notice that a section of the wall falls out, revealing a save point and a roller coaster key. This didn't happen the first time around, and that's for the better. This can be used to unlock the roller coaster control room, allowing us to turn off the ride, something we couldn't do in our original dream. This should allow us to walk on the track without any danger, but Silent Hill wasn't gonna make it that easy for us. Mysteriously, the ride floats back on, causing the coaster to come barreling at us again. But this time, we're prepared, and jump off before it could sever us in half. While that whole fiasco was going on, we finally get a glimpse of what Douglas has been up to.
I hired you to find the girl, and you performed serviceably. What is it now?
You lied to me about Heather, lady. I don't like being used.
Lie?
not lie.
Douglas is remorseful for his actions. He knows if he didn't help Claudia, Harry would probably still be alive. When he was stalking Heather, he genuinely believed he was doing the right thing finding a missing teen. But we also see that Claudia delusionally believes that she is doing the right thing for all of humanity, even if it means she's sacrificing her own to accomplish that. That's probably why Vincent said,
"And you think God is going to save you?"
Douglas has had enough of Claudia yapping about God and decides to pop a cap in this lady.
You're going to kill me? Is it really so easy for you?
I've done it before.
But before we could see what happened, we find ourselves waking back up, still inside the amusement park. Miraculously, a ticket booth is the reason why we didn't fall to our death, so we find ourselves outside a haunted mansion. The Borley Haunted Mansion, to be exact. This is fitting, I guess, considering we are an amusement park, but there's something ironically meta about visiting a haunted mansion within a haunted dimension. But I guess it wouldn't be Silent Hill without a section filled with campiness. Entering the manor, we're greeted by a narrator of sorts as he guides us from room to room.
Welcome to the Borley Haunted Mansion. We're so glad you came. Please come inside and look around. When you feel you're ready, then go through the door.
The first room contains a grisly crime scene, which is initially framed as a murder, but instead, you learned it was self-inflicted.
Do you know why he said he killed his family? Because I felt I had to! Anyway, I'm lying. It's all just a joke. I wanted to scare you, that's all. The truth is, only one person died. By suicide.
The second room, we find ourselves in a study chamber with a peculiar figure rocking back and forth. But this is a misdirection, as heading towards a nearby door, we're instead greeted by Danny.
That's Danny. A quiet young man, but quite friendly as you can see. He was so eager to meet you.
The next room can be found by turning around and entering this obscure door. This leads us to a torture chamber where your focus is shifted to a booby-trapped ceiling covered in spikes. On normal difficulty, it doesn't pose any danger, but hard mode, if you don't aim your weapon as you walk across, it will crush you to death.
I'm so sorry. This place is just falling apart. The mechanism is broken, you see. It wasn't supposed to stop there, I assure you.
And that's the end of the Haunted Mansion. I mean, the narrator even said so.
There's the exit. I hope you enjoyed your tour. Please come back anytime. Or if you'd prefer, we could come and visit you instead.
But oh boy, was this motherfucker lying. As soon as you exit the door, you're greeted with a red sun that's instantly fatal upon contact. Ah, fuck me. Is this where Silent Hill Downpour got the idea for the void? This part is really just the developers fucking with the player because they can.
I have to agree with them.
Running down the hallway, the game will switch camera angles, and even the hallway itself will split apart in an effort to trip you up. The tonal shift here is a complete 180, and I didn't expect this whatsoever. I mean, the game gets you good here. It lowers your guard with the campy horror house, only to say, fuck you, this is a Silent Hill game, you're going to die now. Once you finally overcome the red sun, you'll find yourself in a new area of the park where you'll need to solve a few puzzles to escape. And of course, there's going to be hella enemies. Through a metal gate, we find ourselves in an arena full of pendulums, but you'll need to run past to an open auditorium. It's here within the pitch black, we'll need to find a metal chain and a ruby red shoe. Unbeknownst to the player, picking up these items causes a control room to open up. It's here we'll need to attach the metal chain to a rocket ride and the other end to this rusty metal gate. Doing so, we can activate the ride, ripping the door off its hinges. Through here, we can finally meet up with Douglas, seeing the aftermath between him and Claudia.
Douglas!
You're late.
Are you hurt?
can't move my right leg. I think it's broken.
Unless Claudia has straight up superpowers that we just haven't seen yet, how the hell did she dodge a bullet and break Douglas's leg in the process? This is never explained.
You old fool! Getting yourself hurt like that?
Sorry.
Why did you have to do that for me? What'll I do if you die?
What'll we do if this god thing gets born?
Come on. How powerful could a god from a dump like this be?
It's an interesting turn of events that we see Heather go from being disgusted with Douglas to kind of caring about him when he gets hurt.
You think you're Superman or something?
You know, I always wanted to be him.
It's also here we get a little bit of insight into Douglas as a person. Earlier in the apartments, he said no one would cry if he died, but he then admits that he has a son.
You remind me of my son.
You said nobody was going to cry for you.
But the twist is, his son is dead.
Stupid kid got himself shot robbing his bank.
But what's even more shocking is the action Douglas contemplates at the end of this cutscene.
What are you doing?
Maybe killing you here is the only way to end this nightmare.
At first viewing, this seems really awkward and out of character, but killing Heather is a logical choice. If she's the linchpin to Claudia's plan, Heather's death would prevent God from being born and probably save the world. Although I don't know if this is a plot hole or not, but the cutscene of Valtiel dragging Heather back to life makes this point a little murky. But let's ignore that. If so, Douglas is weighing a heavy moral choice. He could sacrifice Heather for the greater good, but that's the easy way out, and he would be murdering a fairly innocent child. And yet, in the end, he won't do it, because deep down there is some good in him. This scene is important because it shows he's putting his faith in Heather, and trusts she'll be able to stop Claudia and save the world. Which is some insane storytelling. This girl went from a normal teenager in a mall to saving the world in a span of a day or two. It's also after this point, the player can make their own decision to forgive Douglas or leave him be.
What is it?
I just came by to make sure you were still alive.
Sorry. I'd come with you if I wasn't hurt.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the problem with older guys, huh? I'll handle things. You just rest. Don't die on me, okay?
This simple action of whether you talk to him or not after this cutscene does play a role in which ending you will get. I didn't know that at first, so my reasoning for talking to him was because I was genuinely worried for him, even after he contemplated murdering us. And no, for the people out there wondering, you cannot kill Douglas here. Trust me, I tried it when testing. After this point, you'll be near a fortune teller's house where you can find Douglas's notebook. This just gives additional info on how Douglas started his case, trying to track down Heather. The most interesting tidbit of this is that we learned that Heather and Harry used to live in Portland until Harry got involved in a murder case. It was in self-defense, so he didn't serve any time, but an old cultist member found them and Harry wasn't playing any of that shit. In the same room with the notebook, you'll find a disturbing doll head. This creepy doll head and the ruby red slipper need to be placed in a fairy tale themed attraction next door. The doll head goes on Snow White's hand while the red slipper belongs to Cinderella. I'm not a fairy tale expert by any means, but I always thought Cinderella wore a glass slipper. Maybe I'm missing something here. Either way, placing these objects allows us to open a back door that leads to a giant dragon statue. It doesn't do anything, it just looks badass. This leads us to the nearby merry-go-round where we can find a note manifested from Harry Mason. You can even see his iconic notepad in the background, which was the original save point in Silent Hill 1. It's a really long note, but it gives us insight into Harry's mind 17 years ago. Despite Dahlia calling Alessa a demon, Harry couldn't bring himself to believe that, as when he saw Alessa, he swore she looked just like Cheryl. Rounding the corner, you'll be able to board the merry-go-round where, just like Silent Hill 1, there's a boss battle here. To start it, we'll need to cut down these merry-go horses that are being held up by these painful looking hooks. Once you've slain every last horse, the ride comes to an abrupt stop as pools of dark energy pile up towards the middle. It's here we find us? Remember earlier when we got pushed by that train spirit, but it only happened after Heather read a newspaper? I believe this is a similar situation, showing that when Heather hears or sees certain things, they can manifest into the Otherworld. Douglas told her it might be better off if she dies, and then shortly afterwards, we get a manifestation of Alessa trying to kill us. I don't think that's a coincidence. As for the boss fight, it's a little harder than previous ones, as you have to beat Alessa 4 different times if you want to win. The final and hardest phase has Alessa using the submachine gun. I decided to pull the katana back out since I figured the animations on the submachine gun would be long and drawn out, allowing us plenty of time to stab her. And I was right, after only a minute of us dancing around the arena, she finally succumbed to all the wounds. The ending to this fight is very somber. It just kinda ends and you're left in this now dark room with only a glowing red note in Alessa's place. It's a short but bitter note showing that Alessa would rather kill herself than let God be born. Figuring if she just gives up and ends it all, it would be far easier than the alternative, but this is where Heather and Alessa are different. If Alessa is the dark manifestation of all the pain and suffering that resides in her heart, Heather is the beacon of light that wants to live. Despite having all the memories, pain, and trauma Alessa has, she isn't Alessa, she's Heather. I believe this boss fight is the turning point where Heather comes to terms with who she is as a person, and that's honestly beautiful to see. After this fight, the only way we can go is a newly open hallway that's damp and fleshy. Maybe I'm sick in the head, but this looks like you're passing through someone's coochie. At the end of the flesh tunnel, we find ourselves in a hallway, but this one has a prayer to God split into multiple sections along the wall. This gives us an indication we've probably been teleported to the local church Vincent was referring to. And if so, we should run into Claudia, and it doesn't take us long to do so.
How did you get here?
Claudia is confused how we made it here, but quickly deduces that Vincent had a play in it.
Luring you here also serves my purposes.
Checkmate.
Not yet. The time is not yet at hand.
You know, Heather could kill Claudia here. There's nothing stopping her from painting this entire room crimson red, but looking back on it, I love that they added this detail because it will make sense at the very end of the game.
Oh, Alessa. The world you wanted is nearly here.
That's not what I want.
Not you. Alessa. Your true self.
But I am Alessa. My little Claudia, my dear sweet sister.
Alessa? Is it you? Oh, how I've missed you.
I don't need another world. It's fine the way it is.
This is genuinely a 200 IQ play by Heather now that she has all of Alessa's memories, but this is quickly foiled because A, Claudia is batshit crazy, and B, Heather's anger is actively working against her, which is by Claudia's design.
Listen, suffering is a fact of life. Either you learn how to deal with that or you go under. You can stay in your own little dream world, but you can't keep hurting other people. Besides, I'll never forgive you for hurting my father.
As the angrier she gets, the god within becomes empowered, thus creating more contractions. You can even see her start to hunch over in pain mid-sentence.
And for that, we need God.
You self-righteous witch! No one asked you to help!
It's growing within you. You despise me, don't you?
You're damned right I do!
That's good.
After this cutscene, we can explore the chapel room, which again looks gorgeous, but there's only two things worth looking at. There's these paintings on the wall that give the origin story of how the cult came to worship the deities they do, and there's an Eye of the Night tarot card located on a ledge behind the preacher's stand. Once you have this, you can follow after Claudia, and it's in the next room you'll discover the map for this area. It's different from every other map we've seen thus far. This one is crude and childish, like something a kid would draw while waiting for food at a Chili's. But it's what's next to this map that's far more intriguing. This is a set of confession booths. The left has someone inside, and no matter how hard you try, you just can't enter. But it's the right one that's unlocked, and you can step inside, and within, we can hear the sounds of a woman sobbing.
Dear God, please forgive me. I know I'll be put to death for the sins I've committed. And I'll go to my death gladly and with a peaceful heart. But please, grant me just a small piece of your everlasting mercy. Let me see my child once within your golden gates.
This lady is confessing her sins. From what I can gather, her daughter was murdered, so she killed in revenge. But that isn't the point of the booth, it's what follows afterwards. The game puts you in an uncomfortable situation where you have to choose between forgiving the woman or saying nothing. Forgiving her is questionable, if not morally wrong. Heather is not a god, and honestly probably shouldn't even be hearing this conversation. But that aside, let's say she does forgive her. How can we pardon the sins of another when the whole reason we're here in Silent Hill is to commit the same exact sin this lady did? This is one of the reasons why choosing to forgive plays a part if the player will get the bad ending or not. The developers are punishing players that can't comprehend their own hypocrisy, whereas saying nothing puts you on track to get the good ending. You can realize that you're no different from this lady. Your pursuit into Silent Hill was not for altruistic reasons, but selfish ones, and you're content with committing that sin. Now, if you ask me personally, I don't know what to make of Silent Hill 3 when it comes to themes of revenge. Douglas and now this confession lady have been beating over our heads that we shouldn't commit acts of revenge as vengeance doesn't solve anything. Which to a degree I understand, but in the face of someone as twisted and stubborn as Claudia, I really can't blame what Heather is doing. After this confession, we can finally make our way into the chapel where things aren't as they seem. The first enemy you'll encounter is the closer, but this time they're corrupted with dark energy and appear to have a green glow to them, as if they're corrosive. But it's past the closers where things become evident that this chapel isn't normal. The blood-rusted metallic hellscape of the Otherworld is on full display here. The opening section with Claudia was merely a facade, as pulling back the curtains reveals the sinister nature of this chapel. Past a set of insane cancers, we can find two doors. One leads to a small room where we can discover cassette tape, and the other leads to a hallway where we can hear a familiar whine, followed by invisible footsteps leading us towards a painting. The crying you hear is a manifestation of young Alessa, which we know because this same crying sound played in SH1. But another clue is that a wheelchair is right next to the source, which is a piece of imagery that's heavily associated with Alessa. Inspecting the picture, we can discover a hidden door behind it, but we won't enter it just yet as there's a save point nearby. Rounding the hallway, you'll discover a belfry with 3 paintings and the biggest save symbol we've seen thus far. Looking at the paintings, we can see 3 prominent figures of the cult. The first being St. Nicholas, who we can infer was a high-ranking doctor. The second being St. Jennifer, which thanks to Silent Hill 2, we know she was supposedly killed by persecuting Christians. Hence why it says, unwavering faith under death's blade. But it's the third painting that's most fascinating. St. Alessa, Mother of God, Daughter of God. That's Heather and Alessa, the mother of God being Alessa, and the daughter of God being Heather. Alessa was the part of the soul that wanted to die, and Heather is the part of the soul that wants to live. Again, this was confirmed after the Alessa boss fight, but here the game's just reaffirming it to the player. Now, back to that hidden door behind the painting. Going through it, you can find Valtiel being a weird guy again. This time he's crawling back and forth through the vents. At the end of the hallway, you'll find yourself in an open void containing an elevator and multiple doors to enter. If you listen closely, you can hear the sounds of the radio pinging, and for good reason. Remember the missionary boss? The guy that killed Harry Mason? Yeah, that's now a common enemy through this area. Instead, they're called scrapers, and they're a lot weaker in comparison. This is where that stun gun I've been saving all game really comes in handy. On the same floor, you can discover a room that teleports us to a chapel library. If desired, there's a few books around that go deeper into the origins and mythos of the Order, but honestly,
we do not care.
The reason we're here is for this tarot card, but as always, we get a little more than we expected.
Hiya, Heather.
Our favorite Discord moderator, Vincent.
You make me sound like some kind of unwanted pest.
Upon pressing him about whose side he's truly on, he gives us a bit of insight into why he's been doing the things he does.
So why did you help me out then? Was that also part of trying to resurrect God?
It's not uncommon for people to worship the same God and still disagree.
God? Are you sure you don't mean devil?
Whichever you like. The point is that now I really am on your side. I don't want God to be born. Wouldn't be convenient. Much too unpredictable.
So you've been using me to stop Claudia, is that it? Do your own dirty work.
My dirty work? I think we both had our own interests in mind. You hate her too, don't you?
But it's not until Heather speaks back to him in a condescending tone that he flies off the rails and spouts the most malicious line all game, a line that's gaslighted players for 2 decades.
Oh, really?
Don't stand there looking so smug. You're the worst person in this room. You come here and enjoy spilling their blood and listening to them cry out. You feel excited when you step on them and snuff out their lives.
Are you talking about the monsters?
Monsters? They look like monsters to you?
Oh no.
Don't worry. It's just a joke.
Yeah, I think we should break this down, but the implications here are absolutely horrific. So there are 2 camps of thought. People that believe Vincent was lying / gaslighting the player, and people that believe he's not lying, as there's a grain of truth in every joke. If you ask me, I'm split, but I'll show off some examples that I noticed that could prove Vincent wasn't entirely joking. The first being the missionary and the scrapers. They're the most humanoid enemies we've fought thus far, and they're sentient enough to follow Claudia's commands perfectly, which might imply they aren't monsters, but cult members that appear as monsters. The second example is back in the hospital. On the 3rd floor, there was an area called the Special Treatment Room that I purposely skipped over. But inside, you can find a note detailing the wicked acts staff were committing at the hospital. A nurse was sentenced to 12 hours in solitary confinement due to showcasing brutality towards a patient. Now, this is odd because normally if you did something like this, you would get instantly fired. But we can see the dismissal policy has been suspended. Then you'll notice some handwritten notes that say, "The trick is to not leave any marks," which is beyond fucked up. That's one sadistic ass nurse, but this is made even worse when another note states the chief is a pervert and implies that the sadistic nurse might have been assaulted while in confinement. But it's that first part that's damning. The nurse was locked in solitary confinement for 12 hours, and upon inspecting the middle cell, you can unlock it, discovering a nurse inside. Yeah, Vincent might be right. But finally, we have to talk about the enigma that is Leonard. To my knowledge, there is not a single concrete explanation as to why Leonard has the appearance of a towering monster. This is made even more confusing when you realize he can speak normally and is sentient enough to know what Claudia and Heather are doing. The only other boss who could speak like that was Mary at the end of Silent Hill 2, but we knew for a fact Mary was already dead. Considering Claudia freaked out that we killed Leonard, I would assume he was alive until, you know, we went down and murdered him. But this is odd, as we can only see Leonard in the Otherworld. And that's what's tough about this game. It's hard to tell what's ambiguous and what's just straight up plot holes. But I can tell you one thing, that outburst was one of rage, not humor, so there just might be a hint of truth in Vincent's muddy lie. Regardless, he questions if we have the seal of Metatron.
Did you get the seal of Metatron?
Which we do.
You mean this thing?
Yes, that's it. As long as we have that, we're fine.
And then hands us a big book before fucking off again. The book basically tells us the seal will work regardless if the target is good or evil, but its power will cause a high burden on the user. Heading back out to the void, we can enter the elevator, heading down one floor. It's here you can get a better glimpse of the terrain, and this feels like we're in the lowest depths of hell. Something you'll notice is that the doors here are not bound by the laws of physics. One room led us to the library, while this one has us inside of a morgue. This reminds me of the nowhere area from Silent Hill 1, where each door would lead you to somewhere completely different. Within the morgue, you'll find the Hanged Man tarot card. How fitting. And next door, we can find a room that teleports us to our apartment, more specifically, Harry Mason's room. The lighting here is pretty, but the room is anything but. It's covered in bloody marks and the walls are decaying. The only thing worth looking at sits on a blood-soaked mattress. It's a diary from Harry Mason showing that he did eventually figure out Heather is the reincarnation of Alessa, but he doesn't care. He still loved her, and we learned that Heather was Harry's most beloved treasure. But he also recognizes that he shouldn't view Heather as a replacement to his original Cheryl. It's also bittersweet that Heather mentions she has one more memory of her sweet and gentle mother, which I would assume is referring to Jodie Mason, Harry's late wife. Leaving the room after that sweet moment, I almost pissed myself in fear as two scrapers spawn as you leave Harry's room. To remind you, these fuckers are the reason your ass is an orphan now. Now, these final parts have you walking through many hallways filled with lots of enemies, but eventually you'll find Alessa's old bedroom, but you'll need to grab the brass key. Taking this to another hallway, you can find a second set of invisible footsteps followed by crying. This will reveal a hidden passageway. But that's not the only thing in this hallway. At the very end, you can see Valtiel turning valves again as a pair of two girls' legs dangle out of long red skirts. You can interpret this many ways, but I see it as either foreshadowing to the god's birth, or it's symbolic of the merging of Cheryl and Alessa. In the secret hallway, we can discover the hidden room where Lisa tended to burn Alessa. It's here you'll find the Fool tarot card inside a book about the origins of Aglophatus. Back at the beginning of the chapel, this is where shit just starts to hit the fan. Exiting this room, the chapel is turning into straight up nightmare fuel as the walls are bleeding, causing massive pools of blood flooding the floors. Using that brass key from earlier on a heavily locked door, we can open a new section that leads us to even more rooms. The first one teleports us to a Midwich elementary classroom, the same one we saw back in SH1. There's even Alessa's iconic desk sitting in the very middle from when she used to get bullied, and I love that they kept this goofy wolf photo from the first game. The next door we enter puts us in what appears to be Vincent's room. A collection of notes on his desk shows that members of the cult dislike Vincent using the Order's money for personal pleasures, and there's even rumors he's been extorting donations from some members. There's also a cassette player where we can listen to the tape we discovered earlier. It's a long recording, but it shows how members view the events of Silent Hill 1, stating that everything happened 17 years ago because a group of pagans spit in the face of God.
Spit in the very face of God.
It also shows how Vincent was quite worried when news broke out that Claudia finally found Alessa, aka Heather, at the mall.
Alessa has been found? Did Claudia say that?
Yes.
Then it must be true. Her sight rarely fails her.
Bless the Lord.
But the final door of this area is Claudia's bedroom. It's here we can collect the High Priestess Tarot card, which is the final one we need. With all these cards in hand, we can backtrack back to Alessa's old bedroom, putting the cards in a certain order so we can unlock this door, just like we did 17 years ago as Harry Mason. What lies on the other side is a hallway with terrifying music. The way the camera is angled here is nerve-wracking, where you're forced to look behind. The framing here makes you think that someone's gonna start chasing you, but man, thankfully that was just my own delusional paranoia. At the end of all of that, we find ourselves facing one last double door. Beyond this door, we bear witness to Vincent and Claudia going at it again.
What do I want? Well, for the two of you to die, that would be nice. Then I could relax.
When did you stop believing in God? God lives. Just look around you.
But I do believe in her. In my own way. I fear her, and I adore her. But I haven't lost my mind like you. You think that this is the work of God? Isn't this all nothing more than your own personal nightmare? Just like Alessa 17 years ago? If this really is the work of God, then I'd say she has lousy taste.
You mock God? Traitor. You will go to hell.
Not that again! Who do you think you are, claiming to know God's will?
Go home, Vincent.
Home? This church is my home. I built it with my power. The power of money that you view with such scorn. Although I admit that this atrocious scenery is all yours.
If you continue to get in my way...
Did you kill me? Well...
But that's where we step in.
Well... The guest of honor has arrived.
Vincent gives us the kill order, but Claudia has had enough of his shit.
Heather, go ahead and kill this crazy bitch.
You'll go to hell!
What did you do?
The fuck does it look like, Heather? He got stabbed. You were right there.
You're not going to run? I guess this is the end.
No, the beginning. As Vincent said, the time has come. Alessa, I'm saddened that you didn't agree to this on your own. But I thank you for nurturing God with all the hate in your heart. It's time for mankind to be released from the shackles of sin which bind them.
But a God born from hatred can never create a perfect paradise.
Happy people can be so cruel.
Why do you cling to this corrupt world? You know that only God can save us.
And save you too? Happy ending? I'd rather go to hell.
No, I don't expect to be saved. And that's fine. Unless, my dearest, for the pain that I've caused you, I deserve no mercy.
After some back and forth between Heather and Claudia's ideologies, Vincent, on the brink of death, decides we should use our trump card, the Seal of Metatron.
You feel so guilty about it. Why don't you go to hell? Heather, use the seal.
Vincent? The Seal of Metatron?
Now your stupid dream is over.
However, it does nothing as Claudia states it's a piece of junk and decides to stab Vincent right through his heart.
You're pathetic.
Just like Harry's death, this pissed me off because we spent the entire second half of the game trying to find this piece of metal only for it to not work. When you write your story this way, it makes the player feel like everything they've done up to this point was meaningless. Why even build up this entire plot point about the Seal of Metatron and even have the player read books that further this idea just to piss it all away at the end of the game? I guess it is a twist, but it's poorly done in my opinion.
Now, Alessa, there's nowhere else to run.
Just accept it, Alessa. The pain will disappear. I've been waiting so long for this. Even as a child, I knew I would see the coming of this day. I knew I would be a witness to it. Judgment Day. Alessa?
Shut your stinking mouth, bitch!
The game gives us control over Heather again, but it doesn't tell you what to do. You're just standing here awkwardly in silence. You can view Vincent's dead body, where you learn Heather, despite hating him, didn't want to see him die. You can also interact with Claudia, but she just states her name. Now, remember earlier when we first entered the chapel, I said, you know, Heather could kill Claudia here. There's nothing stopping her from painting this entire room crimson red, but looking back on it, I love that they added this detail because it will make sense at the very end of the game. I pointed that out because it's a good thing Heather didn't. If you shoot Claudia here, you fell for her trap and she wins. God is nurtured by hate, so choosing to hit or shoot Claudia is the final act of hatred that allows it to burst open from Heather's body. So you might be asking, how the hell can you beat Claudia? And the answer is, Harry gave us the ability to stop God a long time ago. Since the beginning of the game, you've always had a special item in your inventory. It's called the pendant, and it states that Harry gave Heather this on her birthday. This isn't an ordinary necklace, it contains a piece of Aglaophatus, which is a liquid that has the ability to dispel demonic forces and grant supernatural protection. Eating this is the equivalent of taking supernatural Plan C. This is a fetus deletus pill, and what happens next is straight up nightmare fuel. no, it gets worse. What Claudia does next is absolutely unhinged.
What is this?
Looks like God didn't make it.
Stop! God is...
Claudia!
So yeah, Claudia just ate the fetus and wants to birth God herself. Now, wait a damn minute. If Heather has had the Aglophitous this entire time, why couldn't she have eaten it any time before this point? I understand that when you look at jewelry, your first instinct isn't to just gobble it up right away. That's some mentally ill behavior. But you're telling me that Harry went through all the trouble to secure it, but never told Heather, hey, if you start feeling contractions, you should probably take this. Like, it kind of pisses me off when I think about it. Why did we spend all that time trying to find the Seal of Metatron when we had what we needed from the very beginning of the game? If we had instead spent the entire game trying to find this necklace, then that would make a lot more sense to me. I don't know, man, it's a little weird. The game also doesn't tell you you need to eat it. You just have to get to this point and just spam your inventory until something works. With Claudia turning into a ripening red tomato, she begins to bleed and explodes into a sus looking hole. Yeah, that's a whole ass coochie, and we have to dive right in. We can see the walls are lined with feminine organs, and Heather is enraged that she wasn't able to kill Claudia herself.
You can't be dead. I was gonna kill you.
But that should be the least of her worries, as we'll need to slay God.
This is God?
This is the final boss of Silent Hill 3, and God is this mishmash amalgamation. The boss fight is really annoying, like most final bosses in these games. It has the ability to rain fire and swipes the arena with its extremely long arms that deal massive damage. On top of massive damage, its health pool is ridiculously high, making it the most formidable foe we've ever faced. Using every bullet I had at my disposal still wasn't enough to kill God, so eventually the only weapon I could rely on was the katana. And this turned out for the best, because using this weapon, I was finally able to beat the damn thing. And just like every other enemy we faced, we stomped them until we've snuffed the life out of them. With that, Heather can breathe for a minute and finally let out a tiny piece of her pain.
Is that the end? I guess it's time to roll the credits.
Dad!
This brings us to the ending cinematic. This changes depending on which ending you get, but this time around, we got the good ending.
Heather, is it really over?
Not yet. You're still alive.
Heather?
Just a joke.
You've got terrible
I'm
taste.
sorry.
Heather, did
You don't have to call me that. I'm not hiding anymore.
You want me to use your real name? What was it again?
Cheryl. The name my father gave me.
You gonna let your hair color go back too?
I don't know. Don't you think blondes have more fun?
Some people might think this ending is tonally off, but I'm inclined to disagree. I think this is on par for a teenager like Heather. Everyone processes trauma differently, and for Heather, using humor just might be the way she's masking everything. But yeah, that's the ending of Silent Hill 3, but this is not where your journey ends. There's actually 2 more endings and a ton of hidden secrets. The second ending is the bad ending, which you can get by accumulating 4,000 endgame points. There's a hidden point system, and you're awarded a point for each kill that you get, every point of damage you receive, and if you choose to forgive the lady in the confession booth. Remember how I said the perfume would be beneficial in New Game Plus? Well, that's because this item causes enemies to be even more aggressive, and sometimes spawning more. Doing all these actions and accumulating 4,000 points will give you the possessed ending, where Heather actually kills Douglas instead of joking about it. This ending is by far the worst one you can get, unless you just have a raging hate boner against Douglas. But what if I told you there was an ending that's actually better than the good ending? And to unlock this ending, we'll need to talk about these secrets and Easter eggs that come available after your first playthrough. Beating the game gives you access to New Game Plus, where things are slightly different, and there are 7 new weapons you can unlock. The first weapon is the Unlimited Ammo SMG. This is unlocked if you finish off the final boss using a melee weapon. If you can achieve that, it can be found in the beautiful alleyway after leaving the initial bathroom. With unlimited ammo and getting it at the very beginning of the game, this weapon will make your next SH3 run quite a breeze. The second weapon is the Beam Saber, which is unlocked if you beat the game with more melee kills than range ones. Its location is in the second floor area of the mall, near the door where you can find the Helen's Bakery key. It's clearly a nod to the lightsaber from Star Wars, and it's very powerful, with some unique animations to match. The third weapon is the Flamethrower, which is unlocked if you beat the game with more range kills than melee ones. Its location is in Helen's Bakery, which honestly, perfect placement, but I have to say, despite this weapon having infinite ammo, it is complete and utter dog water. It tickles even the weakest of enemies and should be treated as a novelty weapon than a truly viable one. The next weapons are interesting to say the least. On New Game Plus, after the train ride, you'll notice that the sewer area is even creepier than before. Certain areas will now transform blood red and the walls will start bleeding just like they did in the chapel. But that's not the only thing that's changed in the sewers. Going back to the walkway where you have to drop the hairdryer to kill the sewer demon, there's a new entity in the water. Approaching the edge, you can interact with it and have the option to drop your steel pipe into the water. It's here you can meet the sewer fairy.
What was it that you dropped? Was it this precious gold pipe?
She'll ask you a series of 3 questions that you'll need to answer truthfully. If you do so, she gives you 2 new weapons.
Perhaps it was only this filthy steel pipe that you dropped. I have finally found a truly honest man. In return, I will give you both the gold pipe and the silver pipe to keep.
Now, here is where the game will really mess with you if you're greedy. After getting the pipes, you can re-drop them into the water, but if you do, buddy, they're gone forever. Additionally, if you lie to the fairy, she takes away your steel pipe and scolds you for being a filthy liar.
Perhaps it was only this filthy steel pipe that you dropped. You are a liar! I have nothing to give to you!
Now that's 5 weapons, so you're probably wondering, where are the other 2 weapons? And well, they're inside you. The 6th weapon is the Heather Beam, and it's only unlocked after you eliminate at least 333 enemies spread across however many playthroughs it takes. You know you've unlocked it when you start up the game and see 2 Halo of the Sun swirling around Heather's head. This weapon is powerful, but relies on your stamina, so you can't shoot it often. I mean, between me and you, I thought that was kinda lame, so I used a cheat patch. This patch enabled me to fire it infinitely, and honestly, it was the most fun I ever had playing Silent Hill 3. That was until I discovered the 7th weapon. There's something else that unlocks after you beat the game, and it's the ability to input character codes that unlock new outfits for Heather. It's how I'm wearing this red tank top, but one of the outfits is far different than the others. Using the code Princess Heart, you can unlock the transform costume. This places a unique looking wand in your inventory, and equipping it, this happens. Yeah, the cutscene just cuts out abruptly, but you're left with this unique Sailor Moon inspired costume for Heather, and when you combine this with the Heather Beam, you get the Sexy Beam that's even stronger. I mean, just look at this shit.
Sexy Beam.
But I'm telling ya, there's even more. So remember that 3rd ending, right? Using this costume in conjunction with the Sexy Beam, if you're able to kill 30 enemies before reaching the apartment, entering the door, you'll discover something completely different.
I'm home, Dad. Listen, something crazy is going on.
Shut up! You're back! What happened?
I shit you not. Harry Mason and James Sunderland and an alien are the bestest of bros, and then they go to Silent Hill and blow that bitch up.
Oh, Dad, you're the coolest!
This is canonically the best ending. It even comes with its own musical score. And with that, I can finally say we've completed Silent Hill 3. It's a game that I believe lives up to the hype of being the most terrifying Silent Hill, but I can't say it's my favorite Silent Hill. When compared to the 2 absolute juggernauts that are Silent Hill 1 and 2, for me personally, it doesn't hit the same, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game by any means at all. My biggest gripes come from pacing and writing issues. Honestly, a lot of the areas of the game, such as the subway, sewer section, and construction site, could be cut out, and the plot wouldn't change much at all. I also can't get past the elephant-sized sour taste in my mouth with how they killed Harry off-screen. And the entire gauntlet through the hospital is meaningless after you realize that the Seal of Metatron ended up just being a piece of junk. When you think about it, Leonard's death achieved nothing. Why did we even kill him? But regardless, I can overlook my personal gripes because Silent Hill 3 absolutely nails the atmosphere, gameplay, and it highlights mature themes that you don't see a lot of horror games tackle. Candidly, I'll never be able to truly relate to Heather Mason, but I can see some of the struggles this game was subtly, and not so subtly, surfacing. Whether you love or hate Silent Hill 3, it's undeniably made a long-lasting impact on fans for over 20 years, so it definitely did a lot of things right. So for my Silent Hill tier list, I'm putting SH3 in A tier. But you know what's above S tier? My lovely patrons who've been supporting this channel. On screen are 3D renders I made of each patron's favorite game. Except for you, Ashley. If you're watching this, I have no idea what your favorite game is. So I'm gonna assume you like Mario. But on some real shit, you guys have been absolutely amazing and I genuinely can't thank you enough. So thanks for watching these goofy ass videos and yeah, there'll be more on the way.